Okay.
Well, that's a loaded question.
Yeah?
You want us to actually answer that?
No, I was. But I do have a question though I'd like you to answer.
Didn't answer the first one.
But
Didn't answer the first one yet.
the question is how has the course been going so far? You know, and not everybody's been able to be here every week, but I've just wondered, has it helped you in any way? Or have you found yourself observing more or doing anything? Has it made things worse in any way? Are there any thoughts on kind of how the course is and how it's kind of been interacting with your life?
I think we kind of more the cautions for us having.
Being more cautious?
Yes, or my cautions, you know.
Okay.
Yeah, things are going really good. It probably isn't, you know. Yeah, and what I did too, in the mindset things are going really well, and you stop yourself from either really and take a look and see if I'm falling into patterns of that.
Okay. Makes sense. Did anybody do the exercises that I gave you at the end of the session last week? It was just one exercise.
Oh, what was that?
It was take one of these different things and
No.
okay.
I concentrated on the body,
Okay.
on my body, because I always wanted to take care of myself physically. And I'm learning less and more too, but this week I made a concerted effort to do some stretches, to get a massage and stuff like that. And so, yeah. But that's what I did, to take care of my body.
Good. Very good. Anything else? Any of those things?
Good. I did, well, I'm always sort of conscious about the centers I just read usually.
Yeah.
But I know that I'm supposed to be ones or guts and stuff, but I don't think I follow it very well. I sort of fight the gut, for whatever reasons.
You mentioned that before.
Yeah, I do, and I go more head, think more when I get a squirrely brain, and I don't know if it's because it's about right and wrong, you know, so instead of listening to my gut that might give me the right answer, I go to my head, and then I play this ping pong game, you know, and it's like, well, okay, we could do it this way, or maybe this way, so I need to shut that down and go with my gut.
Trust your
I have a
gut.
hard time doing that. Really hard time.
But you did say it's usually right.
I think so. I've been told that, yeah. Or maybe it's just because I don't want to listen to it.
I wonder why you would want to listen to it.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I'll ponder that.
Fine. Okay. Any other comments on how the course has kind of been going so far?
I haven't been able to be here for many of them, actually for only one, but I'm in a highly stressful situation in my life, and more recently with the failing health of both of my parents. And so having to initiate power of attorney and personal directive, visiting doctors, and I had to take my mom to the emergency yesterday, spent all day there.
Oh wow.
So I don't have much time to sit and think and reflect on these things, but I'm thinking as things kind of settle down, I'll be able to kind of evaluate a bit more. Now, how did I do? Like, what are the things that I'm doing? How did I respond to certain things? One of the things that is very helpful is that I'm in touch with the dementia care team through the Alberta Health Link.
Right.
And they asked a lot of questions about my own health, my own
Caregivers.
mental health and caring for the caregiver and ensuring that I'm doing what's required for me and so on, so that I can be healthy. And so it's a bit of a sort of a getting some instant feedback from some of these tests that they do on you or whatever. And are you depressed or are you burned out? And I'm just laughing, you know, thinking, well, of course I am, you know. Okay, well, do you mind if we share that with your doctor? Okay. So, you know, being able to kind of discuss some of these things, and I suppose we're all dealing with real life situations. For me, this just seems particularly lively and stressful. And how am I dealing with that stress, and how does that, you know, in fact, my wife and I have kind of talked about the Enneagram things, and oh, that's kind of more like me, that's, you know, these kinds of things. So we've been having some more of that dialogue, I guess, at home, because we're both kind of dealing with these things. My wife's dad passed away
Right.
8 weeks ago. So that's kind of on top of, you know, this whole thing within my parents failing, and her mom is kind of trying to manage her own grief, and so we're caregivers all the time. And then our own grief within our own family is difficult to kind of get that perspective. So I'm finding it's just a very busy time. But it's refreshing that I feel like I am even missing coming here. Like I actually miss it because I know that my mind wants to engage in this even more now that I'm sort of reflecting on some of these things. So,
Well, good. Very good. Well, let's kind of move ahead to this week. Can you go ahead to the next slide? Thank you. I want to revisit a little bit the idea of, sorry, it's on the front page. Revisit supportive and unsupportive environments. And for those of you who were here the first week, we talked about this a little bit. And what I did is we read through Genesis 2 and 3, not through the whole chapter, but at the end of Genesis 2, it creates a scene. And this Genesis 2 is about Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. And it creates a scene at the end of Genesis 2. It says, and they were together, and they were naked, and they were unafraid. And, you know, I pictured that, or kind of described that as a supportive environment. Not so much, you know, focusing on being without any clothes on, but the idea that we don't have to, you know, they're in the garden, they were totally accepted as they were, who they were. They didn't need to put anything on, they didn't need to put anything between each other.
No masks.
What's that?
No masks.
No masks, right. They could accept each other just as they were, and they felt accepted and supported by God as well in the garden. And then you move into Genesis 3, and they go ahead and eat the fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And then we see some things coming out in the story of Adam and Eve that we didn't see before. You know, first of all, they cover themselves. And they were, in Genesis 2, they were naked and unashamed. And that's about the only time in the Bible that naked doesn't come together with shame. It's an exceptional time when it says naked and unashamed. So in Genesis 3, when they covered themselves up, they were naked. They realized they were naked and they were ashamed. So shame is the first thing that shows up. And the second thing is hiding. They run and hide and God comes. And the third thing that shows up is anger. And it's an unsupportive environment in Genesis 3 because they don't feel like they can count. And we can talk about why it's unsupportive, but it is unsupportive in how they react. We can see it in the reactions. And we can talk about why they consider it unsupportive and such. But the point is they do consider it unsupportive. And so in our lives, we have supportive environments and we have unsupportive environments. And it's not like all unsupportive environments are bad. You know, oftentimes work may not be that supportive because it might be a crisis time and you have to do certain things. You can't just go and be and have all kinds of hang-ups, I guess. Oftentimes you have to go to work and you have to work. Or home may not be as supportive if you have a lot of responsibilities there too. So life is full of unsupportive environments that are just plain old environments that we all have to deal with. And just living on this earth is somewhat unsupportive sometimes. But we also, hopefully, some of us have supportive environments as well. A supportive environment where you can be yourself, where you know that you can be accepted as you are. You can make mistakes, and people, they love you. They're not going to kick you out or whatever. It's so I'd like you to think about growing up. I've kind of described supportive and unsupportive environments. And does everybody understand that okay? Understand that okay? So think about growing up, went from 0 to 20, and write down 3 to 5 or more if you want to do a bunch of environments when you're growing up. Think about, maybe your elementary school and your home certainly, and your home might have been different when you were teenage years. My family, my parents divorced and my mom remarried. We had a different family in my teenage years and so on. So write down 3 to 5 environments from your growing up years and give each a rating, just of 1 to 5, from unsupportive to, or very unsupportive to very supportive. Let's take a few minutes to do that. Thank you all for being willing to share some and listen to each other and hear each other's stories. Our environments as we're growing up shape us an awful lot. And the Enneagram is a big part of that. They shape our types and how we kind of work with our types and the things we do. So it's a good thing to think about our environments growing up and to see how that has shaped us. And it's not good or bad. It's just simply that's the way it is. And speaking of that's the way it is, unsupported environments are part of life. We have a lot of unsupported environments. And one of the things that we do, one of the things that's part of Enneagram teaching is social strategies in unsupported environments. We kind of, to survive, to get our needs met, people tend to do 3 different things in terms of working with people. And there's the assertive style, which is, let's see, is moving against people. And that oftentimes it doesn't sound very good at first, but it's something a lot of people do that's quite effective. It's, as I list a number of things here, aggressive, assertive, direct, and so on. Things ways that people tend to move against other people. And the next style is the compliance style, and that's moving toward people or principles. It's kind of, if in a stressful situation, you might move toward people to help them, serve them, meet needs, obey rules, those type of things. And then there's the withdrawn style, moving away from people. Taking a step back, regrouping, getting space to think, kind of isolating yourself. It can kind of appear in lots of different ways. So I'd like you to think, and which one of those 3 different styles do you prefer today? And which one did you prefer as a young person? Think about that. Do those 3 make sense? Do you have any questions about the 3 different styles?
For myself, I'm having trouble separating assertive style from assertiveness.
Well, they are similar. I mean, there's people who are assertive often have the assertive style. And we all do all 3 of them. We all do all 3 styles. Well, most of us do all 3 styles. But we tend to have one that we prefer. You can think about yourself when you go into a classroom or go into a new group, especially a group that might be bigger than this. You go into a group of people. Do you tend to kind of move in and try to make things and figure out what's going on, what's happening, or do you kind of hang back and kind of see what's going to happen? Or do you kind of try to find somebody in need? That's what I do is a lot. I'm looking for the people how I can help, what I can do. So it's
Somebody bleeding.
yeah, that type of stuff. And if it's not happening, I'll make it happen. Just need a role. So it's that sort of thing. When you're in a new situation, or when you're in a situation like in a meeting, perhaps at work, do you step up and take the lead? Do you sit back? Do you try to figure out where you can help? Those types of things. There's 3 different styles of kind of relating to people, of how to be socially with people. And we do them for different reasons. But try to, and if you don't know which one you prefer, just kind of probably, most of us probably do a couple of them more often than we do the third. And so, go ahead and go to the next slide. What I'd like to do, there you go. I'd like over here for people that did the assertive style, for them to meet over here. And for people who chose the compliance style to kind of meet in the middle here. And people that chose the withdrawn style to meet over on that side.
Now, wait a sec, just to clarify, because I understood from you from the beginning what style we used as a child or younger person and what style we use now. So which one are we talking, what we use now?
Yeah, let's go with the one we use now. And I guess the one as a younger person is kind of to help people figure it out. But let's go with the one we use now. So let's hear from the different styles. Whoever wrote down for the different groups. I'll start with the compliance style since I have that here in front of me. So why your strategy is a good strategy, I can say the best strategy, but why it's a good strategy. And it's good to move toward people because it's a good way to get people working together. It's a good way to listen to people, to build trust and community, to help others achieve their goals. And what are some good circumstances to employ it? Well, we talked, we're both second children. We talked about being that in the family and not having to be the person lead. And there are different situations in life when there is somebody else taking the lead. You can come along and help them out and be part of what they're doing rather than what you're doing something that you take the lead upon. So that's the compliance style. Any questions about that? Or? For our group?
I mean, I like doing that with other people and helping them achieve their goals. But then there was my older brother. And I didn't like helping him achieve his goals. That was for the birds. So for
You're choosy.
so when I would then become more aggressive. And that's why I was on the fence over here. Then that's why my older brother and I think, clashed more. He had a very different style, but his is just more naturally aggressive. And I would bump into him a lot.
Still?
Interesting that he and I are now in very high negotiating through the power of attorney and the whole personal directive thing. We're working just like hand in glove. Because we're just older and hopefully a little bit more mature, and we're just through a lot of that struggle. We still recognize that each other is very different in our approaches, but we feel like I was talking to him on the phone and I needed his support because I'm taking our mom to the emergency, and I'm saying to him, well, could you look after the finances and the lawyer and this and that and that, and he's happy to do it. And I'm happy to have him do it. So I kind of feel like this has been a lifelong struggle, but it feels like it's moving through it to the other side.
Maybe it's just acceptance as to what you're better at and what he's better at. And seeing that, as you sound like a 2 in the sense of the caregiving, doing the emotional sort of all that stuff. And your brother sounds maybe like a 5 because he's all business and all finances, and so now you can recognize that that's your strong points for each one of you. And
and those
that's great.
and it's kind of like coming to peace with who I am. And not feeling I had to be someone else, because there were certain accolades that those other numbers got, and for being smart and on the debating club and getting straight A's and all that kind of stuff. And here I'm a C+, maybe B- on a good day, but I always kind of fought that. So
I sense a lot of relief that's working out this way.
It's coming at a time when the very fabric of our family, like we're going to be ushering my parents into eternity, right? So, this time in life is important. And I feel terrific most of the time about being here and being present with my parents during this time. And I think my two brothers are just happy to be further away because they wouldn't do well in this environment. So yeah, I think I'm coming to more peace of that, acceptance that I can accept myself.
And then,
And them and not want to be them.
This is all, it's very, very good, because this is what, with the different types, as we understand kind of who we are, we also can understand that we can move to a different type, or move to even these different strategies when sometimes we have to do it, and it doesn't necessarily change who we are. We can do something different than what we normally do and still be who we are.
Well, and that happened when, my brother, wouldn't know how to necessarily talk to a doctor about high-end health issues. And I asked him a question about that, and he said, I don't know. It's probably the first time in my life I can remember him saying, I don't know. But then I said, then this should be the direction that we go. And so I kind of took that assertive path. And it felt very natural to do that. It was like he was kind of backing down appropriately and allowing me to shine into that. So take control of that, because he didn't know. And I'm very used to talking to medical personnel, but he's not.
Okay, let's look at the withdrawn type. Do I see some writing on your paper here, Natalia?
Yes.
She volunteered to speak.
Okay, great. Thanks for volunteering.
We saw reasons why it's a good strategy is it's safe and it avoids conflict. It's kind of a smarter one, and you can join a new group or anything, and you don't charge in. You just kind of see what's what, and you don't make any waves or anything. And circumstances to kind of that's good for would be new environment or work or strangers or a new community or even family gatherings sometimes.
Okay. Any other thoughts on that?
Sometimes the compliant people, sometimes after everybody else has blustered, they come up with a very good idea. And they step back, and that's what I found.
Yeah.
Clubhouse and, right?
Well, you let the assertive people kind of battle it out, and then when they're finally lying down, then you can have your idea.
yeah,
She's right.
Exactly, exactly. That's what we observe. We observe before we open our mouths.
Right.
It's kind of wise, I guess, I don't know. Kind of collect all the vibes.
and then there comes the assertive, we want to poke you guys and say, come on, kid.
That's okay, then that little.
Let's hear from the assertive group. Yeah. What did the assertive group have to say?
Well, sorry, I don't think we really answered the second part of the question.
Were you doing your own thing?
I didn't realize there was a second part. Anyways, okay, so why your strategy is a good strategy? Because you're clear and you want to get to the point and you want to get it done and you want to take charge, and it's a positive way. You want to influence other people. You put yourself out there, you want to initiate. See all those great keys? Yeah, those words make you feel great. I feel really empowered right now.
Just try and stop her.
Get people engaged and you ask the right questions. Okay, so guys, help me out with the rest of the questions.
Well, it's very similar. The two questions are pretty similar.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
I was thinking, I think there's a sort of smart and sort of dumb.
True.
Some people can be assertive and they talk and go, yeah, that's really good. They're assertive smart. But there's some people who are assertive, but they're really stupid. Their ideas aren't thought out, they're kind of, you know?
Mhm.
So I think we're sort of smart.
Oh, very good. That sounds like it was very well thought out.
We're all gonna agree on that.
Okay, let's go to the next slide. Let's finish up with these slides. So they do tend to group the types, some different types with them. And you'll notice that we didn't really follow this necessarily. But, you know, 7s and 1s do tend to be questionable. Different Enneagram books will put them in different categories or different styles. So, but it's, you know, 2s generally are moving toward people. 5s are generally, 5s and 4s and 9s are all kind of withdrawn. You know, Julie can share, she had a hard time with kind of being assertive or seeing how that fit. You know, because the 3s are more inspiring of others. And it doesn't seem like you're moving against people when you're trying to get them to move with you. So, but there is some of that too.
I've actually, noticed how many ways I am more aggressive than I have ever thought. Since we started talking about this, it's like, oh, I guess that would be called aggressive. Oh, I guess that might be called assertive. Oh, and I didn't recognize that myself. So.
See, and as a kid, I saw myself as more compliant.
Well, then you have to be.
Uh-huh.
I think I was more compliant, you know, about being responsible and all that.
Yeah.
One of the things, I was like 10 or 20 or something like that. But as an
Daddy's
adult,
2, goes through me.
I can be afraid depending on the circumstance. I'm able to do it now.
Setting up. Well, we had a little soapbox in grade 7. And people get up and do Zoom.
so you were always a certain age?
Well, let's take a break. So the focus for today. We're on to key number 3, and we're talking about warning signs. And again, these are places that we go, and things that happen to us as we encounter unsupportive environments. And all of, you know, as we grow up, we encounter times of not being supported, no matter how great our family was. And if you want to go back to the Garden of Eden, you know, some of what they did was their own perception. So it's the environment, it's how we perceive the environment, you know, they all kind of work together. But these are some of the results that happen. And each of the types has four things here that I'm going to name. An unconscious childhood message, a basic fear, which kind of follows from that, a basic desire, which follows from the fear, and a lost childhood message is, you know, when all 3 of those go off in one direction, the lost childhood message is lost. So the unconscious childhood message for the 1 is it's not okay to make mistakes. So you think this 1 is they come into the world with this essence of being good and seeing the good in life and people and such. And very young, they realize that things happen better for them when they don't make mistakes. And they're good at not making mistakes. So they begin to warp that a little bit to say it's not okay to make mistakes. It's an unconscious message that 1s begin to get. Does that make sense? So, and then following from that is the fear of being bad, corrupt, evil, or defective. And I put a red button next to that because we all tend to have, that's one of the buttons for each of the different types that you can push. You know, 1s, if you talk about them being bad, corrupt, evil, or defective, they tend to be defensive. Is that?
Oh, yes.
It's like if I do something wrong, so it was bad.
Right.
It was bad, like you're telling me I'm bad, but I wasn't. And I'll say that to Larry sometimes too when he makes a comment about stuff or whatever. I'll say, I feel like I'm not this good girl, that I did something bad. So, you know, even at this age of mine, I still revert to that childhood message.
And it's very deep within us, this fear that we have. And it's and we don't want to, we react. But it's good for us to recognize it too and see. Because when we begin to understand the fear, we can begin to move past it. But the desire, then, because I have this fear, I want to kind of cover up with this desire, which is to have integrity. And that leads to, or deteriorates into, were the words that were used in the book. I got this from The Wisdom of the Enneagram. But deteriorates into didn't fit on my PowerPoint, so I put leads to.
Word choice.
But it leads to perfectionism. You know, because desire to have integrity, it's a good desire, but when it's overdone, it can lead to perfectionism. Things have to be right, and I get too frustrated when things aren't right. And the lost message is that you are good, just in yourself. You know, you as you are good. End of story. You know, when God created the world, everything, human beings, He said, it is good. You know, this is very good. And
Yes.
we lose that. That's one of the lost message for the one. So you can see kind of the flow, how that works, that story. So that builds up to, go ahead and go to the next slide. We talked about this back on the first day. This is kind of the story for the ones. You know, they get into it. The head is thinking the world is not right, I'm not right, and so on. And the heart has an anger, I'm resentful and bitter because neither I nor anything meets my high standards. You know that. And this is for ones and for all the different types. They can be really into this kind of fixation, into this story, or they can be, you know, not that much into it. It's always a part of their lives. They're not going to completely get away from it, but they don't have to be, you know, really down into it. And again, in the Wisdom of the Enneagram by Russ Hudson and Don Riso, he talks about levels for each one of the types, 9 different levels. And at the highest level, we're not really, it's not running our lives. And at the lowest levels, it really is running our lives. And that's, again, it's called The Wisdom of the Enneagram by Russ Hudson and Don Riso. So if we've got this story, this fixation and passion, then I'm going to go ahead and go to the next one. I wanted to bring your attention to wake-up calls. These are things that happen in the life of a one that can help them get a clue into what's going on and that they're kind of falling into their personality. That's what these things are called in the Enneagram, is a personality. And it doesn't mean just who we are, but personality is what we put on. And that's what it means in the Enneagram teaching. So for the wake-up call for the one is feeling a sense of personal obligation to fix everything themselves. You know, when they begin to feel that, you can say, you know, I'm falling into this, you know, I'm coming into this pattern. And it's this lens, this way of looking at the world. And wake-up call number 2, this wake-up call number 2 is something that I got from Helen Palmer in her book, The Enneagram in Love and Work. And this is the way she puts it. They're not exactly the same thing. But she says that focusing on error becomes automatic. That's what we do. We look at the world and we see the errors. You know, we were looking at ones and a video of ones last year. One fellow, there was 3 different ones and a facilitator. He said, when I look at this table, there was kind of an end table in front of them, there was a plant on it. I look at this plant, I see what's wrong with this plant. You know, that type of idea, focusing on error. And when that becomes automatic, self-observation stops. And you'll see those words a lot as we go through this. Self-observation stops. We're not able to see ourselves doing it. All we know is that we're working desperately hard, that you see loose ends everywhere, and you can't rest until it's finished. You know, you got to keep on going, you got to try to fix things and try to fix things. That's kind of a wake-up call. Hey, I'm falling into my personality. And so, and how ones manipulate, you know, when these things happen, we get angry. And all of us do this sometimes. We all have a one in us. And ones manipulate by correcting others, by insisting that others share their ideals. And ones can get into that, over-correcting. They know it makes them upset, but let's correct others and make them upset too, so we can all share our misery together.
Well, because if you're saying me is not being perfect, well, damn, I'm going to see you're not perfect either.
Okay.
Because I know I've had that argument, you know, with Larry will make a comment about something I've done or this or that, and then I go to the, I'm not feeling perfect, but, you know, I'm going to hit you with You're not so perfect yourself, honey.
And I for an eye.
Yeah, exactly.
And I can really resonate with that, because that's what I do in my mind. I think, somebody's gonna call me in and say this is wrong, this is wrong. Well, then I start my list of things that they've done wrong. And I have this conversation that I win, usually.
And
In my
in your
mind.
head.
Exactly.
And then I say, who am I talking to?
But you keep it inside, I wouldn't.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, not at all.
So that's how one's manipulate. And when manipulation doesn't work, again, they kind of falling further into the personality, fearing that they may be evil or corrupt or defective. Again, remember that basic fear. Ones point out evil, corruption, and defectiveness in others. It's much the same thing that we're talking about with the manipulation. So, and the red flag fear, and the red flag is kind of something to really pay attention to that helps. It's kind of the last gasp at self-observation. When things get so bad, we recognize this is a pattern of falling into it again, and what am I going to do? And their fear, the red flag is that their ideals are actually wrong and counterproductive. These things they think are good aren't right. These things, ones tend to think they know what's right and wrong. And when they see that what they think is right is not actually right, when we see that red flag, we can double down. We can move into our personality even more, trying to fix it. And that's often what we'll do, because that's how we approach the world. And it's not just ones, it's all the different personalities. So we'll try to move, we'll try to fix things even more, try to fix other people even more. But we also can step back and say, maybe that's not the whole world. Maybe I'm looking, there's other ways to look at the world besides this lens that I'm caught up in. And oftentimes in life, we'll see ourselves, we'll get to that point of, kind of down to the lower levels of the personality. We'll catch ourselves, and it comes maybe at stressful points. What you're talking about, Rick, with what's going on in your life, that can be very stressful. It's very stressful anyway, but it can really shake us up if we don't handle it well. And lots of other things, can suddenly, things that happen suddenly, or long-term stresses, depression, whatever, they can take us down to these places where we recognize kind of a red flag fear, and then we can either move up or we can go even further down.
I think one of the things I'm thinking about is that I think my mom, without telling tales out of school, so to speak, but I think my mom is a 1. And I think what's so disheartening is that with dementia and depression and her age, she's just spiraling further and further down into this dark hole. These statements are almost identical to how I think she sees the world right now. And she keeps trying to correct my dad. Well, my dad's just sitting there not doing anything. And she's trying to correct him. Well, you did this. It's all, and I think
Well, she's struggling with anger.
Yeah, there's anger there, but it's not just to do with my dad. It's a whole life thing. But there's lots of this blame and not seeing herself as good, and and that then when you see yourself as not good, then you're fundamentally flawed. So she becomes either aggressive to try to fix everybody and everybody around her and everything, or she's passive aggressive. Either she's aggressive or she's like, I'm worthless. So I just see it so clearly in others.
That's the easiest way to see it.
I know.
Just want to be observed.
It's up here, at least I admit it.
Look at point 2.
Let's talk about that.
So, point 2, their unconscious childhood message is that it's not okay to have your own needs. They start out, and 2s are loving people. They want to reach out and love others, and that's what 2s are good at. They can help others, and they get praised for that, and they begin to interpret that as, well, this is the good thing, and it's not okay to have my own needs. And again, where does that story start? It's hard to know, because we reinforce it because of who we are, but our circumstances may reinforce it even more. And to some extent, it's hard. At first I was very suspect of the idea that every 2 has the same message, or every 8 has the same message, and so on. But it's kind of it works out in who we are as the different types. And it may not fit us perfectly, but it is something to think about and consider for each the types, and also how much it fits, even the types that we're not, how much that fits us. So the basic fear of the 2s is being unworthy of being loved. And again, there's a red button there. That is, I'm a 2. It's a big red button for me. That the idea of being unworthy. I'll fight that. It's similar to the 1s, being defective, but it's okay to be defective as long as you're loved. For a 2. But the idea, if you're not loved, it's sort of not worthy of being loved, not helping out enough, those type of things. It's a significant fear. And so the desired way to cover up that fear is to be loved, and leads to the need to be needed. So I will help out other people so I am worthy of being loved. But it doesn't fix, it doesn't deal with the central issue, the central fear. And the lost childhood message is, you are wanted. And because it's just you as yourself, with all of your package, needs and all, are wanted. And if you want, you go ahead and go to the other Alt tab on that other slide. Can you get it there?
I did Alt tab. Oh, I see.
There you go. This is an Enneagram thought for the day. Enneagram thought for the day, and I sent those in the link to those in the email.
Every day.
Every day.
I did too.
Really?
Yeah, it's helpful.
Yeah, you
Interesting.
have to not apply,
Yeah.
subscribe.
Subscribe.
Yeah, you have to subscribe.
Yeah.
Oh, you got it right now.
Just go through Facebook. No, just kidding. But it says here for March 26th, I guess that was yesterday, as children, 2s felt rejected by the protective figure who was responsible for guidance, structure, and discipline. And young 2s reacted by creating an identity that was supportive to the protected figure and became little nurturers. And it says, notice how this childhood pattern affects you now. And I've been thinking a lot about my mom recently, as I tend to do at different times, because we have somewhat of a strained relationship, and this very much identifies, what I feel even now. My mom's 76 years old or so, and feel rejected by her. And I was on the phone with her the other night, and I thought, she can hardly do anything that will make me feel wanted by her, because this is the pattern that I'm into. But this really helped me to put some words on it, to say, and I'm thinking seriously about using this as kind of an intro for me to talk to my mom a little bit more about this. How do I see her as somebody different? Because these patterns begin young, and they can stay with us throughout our lives unless we kind of catch them and see them and begin to work ourselves out of them. And for me, I don't want to talk to my mom about this, because it means I have to be vulnerable, and I don't know what the end is going to be, and I might have to change. If I keep hanging on to my hurts, then I don't know. It's what I'm used to. It's
Your go-to.
Yeah, it's my go-to, and it feels good to hang on to my hurts. I want to be justified in my anger and such, and it's having to let that go and to be vulnerable is a step I need to take. Anyway, this Alt tab should get you back to it.
Why would 2s feel rejected by the person who was the sort of the protected caregiver, the person that had probably their greatest interests at heart? Why would they feel rejected by that person?
Well, again, going back to the unconscious message, it's not okay to have your own needs. And so that part of you is being rejected. And even to make this a little more personal, my mom says when I was about a year old or so, she realized that things came easy for me. So she said, sent me off to help other kids. Maybe it was at 2 years old or something like that, but it was pretty young. And, you know, that type of thing could be interpreted by me, and I don't remember these things, but it could be interpreted as a rejection. You go off and help others. You know, my brother wasn't nearly as, wasn't socially as adept as I was, and again, there was that sense of me sticking around. We did a lot of things together, and that sense of, I'm only okay as long as I'm helping others. You know, that, so me, myself, feels, you know, I can't just be needy. I have to help. And
But you don't feel right in asking for help because your job that you were sort of self-taught
Mhm.
was you needed to help others instead of yourself.
But it's a self-perception though. It's not necessarily that the,
Oh,
That
it
the
can
person
be
by-
very real.
sorry,
Perception is reality.
No,
It-
it can be very real.
It's,
It is.
it can be
It's
both.
true.
Yeah. But, were we gonna say any more, Joy?
No.
Okay.
Well, that was good though. It's hard to read that because we have a daughter in an abusive relationship, and as far as me feeling not being protected or structured or disciplined, I can't, I find it hard to find that.
Yeah, that's what we've been thinking about this.
You know, I find it hard to find that in her childhood and where it came from, because we were,
I think it may have come from, because we had the 4 girls,
Mhm.
and I all of them close together, and they would all play, and then the 3rd and 4th kids were twins, and Andrea is the eldest twin,
by 5 years.
but the older 2 tended to boss the twins around,
Right.
but it could come from that, like they were,
Siblings do make a big difference.
Siblings.
Yeah, it's part of our environment.
yeah, so maybe we didn't protect them enough.
Well, and she moved to being unhealthy too,
Yeah,
Mhm.
you know.
She's one of the twin, the eldest twin?
Yeah,
yeah.
I have the same too, my
So-
Yeah.
so, so this message you, not being wanted, can it be amplified now by this relationship? I'm just trying to figure it out because when I look at that, being, it feels like that's a bad parent. That parent's a parent that didn't do their job. And I don't feel that way. We're perfect, we're good enough, you know?
But I sometimes wonder though, because like, I look at my twins and I know this is a twin situation, if just because unintentionally, they're the first twin that was born, they're the first one that was brought into the world before the other one, and my
Yeah,
second
that's
twin
true.
had health issues. So
Okay.
we had, it was exemplified, I guess, that Kendra needed, twin A, that she needed to be, I guess, because I was thinking about that too, how did Kendra end up in this position? But I think Kelsey needed more attention, so maybe Kendra sort of felt that she needed to be more of a caregiver out there for her sister, and that's maybe how she was rewarded, because I had to focus more attention on Kelsey because she needed more
Right.
attention because of her disabilities, and Kendra maybe perceived that if she helped more, or helped me more, or
Right.
helped with her sister, or protected her sister more. I don't know what your twins' relationship
Yeah.
was, if she felt that she was more of a caregiver to her sister, her twin
Maybe
sister,
it's
that
Sarah.
she fell into that role.
Sarah is the caregiver.
But
I don't know.
speaking to her situation, Kendra was the first one, right?
Right, yeah.
If she's a 2, then she was a good caregiver. You know, if Kelsey needed some more help, you know, with something that Kendra wanted to do, but Kendra also needed her own needs met. So, you know, it works together with who they are, who each of the children are, and the environment. The environment can emphasize it more, or the environment can kind of push against it and try to, you know, emphasizing Kendra's needs as well. But depending on how supportive our environment was, is kind of how strong the message becomes. You know, it is a message that all, you know, each of the different types have to wrestle with the personality of the types. Personality gets there through these desires and messages and such.
Is the related, like greater than, less than, equal to, you know, the higher this, the more this, or?
Yeah, I don't think there's a set formula, but there is that sense of the more support and acceptance you get as children, to some extent, the more mature the parents are, and most of us as parents were pretty young, and we're not that mature ourselves, and so we're just trying to get our own needs met a lot of times, and we end up leaning on our kids for the wrong things, or you know, not giving them things they need. We can be good and healthy parents, and my mom, you know, was a pretty good parent. But
Well, I think as a parent, you'd like to think that you did the best you could, but there's still, or, you know, I'm sure my parents, I know my parents did some things wrong, for sure, but I like to sort of let them off the hook that they did the best they could at the time, because now that I'm a parent, I like my children to feel that way about me too, that I did the best I could. Yeah, I screwed up and I fucked up a lot of times and made mistakes and stuff, but I did, and so each person has that journey to grow from and learn, and, you know, unfortunately, sometimes it's trial and error, but you'd like to think at least they did the best they could, and I like to think my kids think I did the best I could at the time, too. And
I find it really hard to move against that.
move against.
To move against that, the job that we did as parents wasn't sufficient, and
So you
that pushes against me. I push
Okay.
back though. You know,
Okay.
I think that our ways that I found was different things that we did, and you know that. You know, I just found myself pushing against that idea of being unsupported, undisciplined, unstructured.
well, it's
You kind of need
Go
to
ahead.
remember that, you know, we are given this innate part of who we are. The type 2 is as a loving person, that they have this love, right, in their core. That's a gift from God. And how they perceive the world is kind of geared this way. So somewhere along the way, they you know, because they probably, you know, you try different things, but what works is it's not okay to have my own needs because everybody's happier when I do this, and it's more their perception is when I, you know, do these things for other people, which you are drawn to doing, then everybody's more happy, or you know, something's
You
even
survive better.
You survive better. Something's better. You feel better, maybe even, and so then it's like, well, then I'll just do more of this, and then, but if I, you know, so then all the other stuff builds up, but that's what I think it is. It's not that we're, you know, we failed in our parenting or whatever. It's more that, you know, no matter what we do or what the parent did, we would probably end up this
it's
way.
like, why didn't his brother feel that way, his mother
Well,
treated
Yeah.
people the
And
same?
I do view Andrea as unhealthy too.
did you say you need to view her that
No,
way?
I view her as unhealthy too, because of because being a loving person, meeting others' needs, this other person was able to manipulate that and be very good at it. So I see that as the bigger influence than her environment she grew up in. I guess I've had to weigh everything. You
So
know?
am I hearing you right? You're feeling guilty because your daughter is in this? You feel that you failed her in some way? Because I was in an abusive marriage too.
Mhm.
But you have to come to a place and take responsibility for your own choices,
Oh, yes, yeah.
right? And I didn't blame my family for it or my parents. My daughter's not in a healthy relationship now either,
Mhm.
which is very troubling with the children and everything. And I'm powerless over it because I thought I had you know, I didn't raise them in that. I chose to raise them on my own so they wouldn't be experiencing abuse and that sort of thing in their home, and they didn't. And yet she's chosen this kind of a relationship.
I really appreciate it.
I never completely free from that. I understand that she makes her own choices. But
Yeah.
there's still a part of me, like 25% or whatever.
Yeah, I know.
It does feel like responsible for where she is. But 75% understands the dynamics of that, but there's still that part that,
But that's where my sadness is.
Yes, yes.
yes.
And to relate there, my son came out as a gay man last year, and he's a strong 2. And when he came out and said, you know, he kept repeating the phrase, "I am unworthy to be loved. I'm unworthy to be loved." And I'm thinking to myself, where did that come from? Like, that was never part of the language that we had in our home. And he has a strong desire to be loved. So he's now with a gay lover, like, you're 10 years older than him. A desire to be loved. He goes out and has weird sex with strange men in weird places. I'm thinking, what on earth? Like, what has been driving this? And so I think I'm relating to
Yeah.
the 25%, you know, you say, what the heck did we do wrong? How could I have missed this? We're perceptive parents, we're loving parents. We raised our kids in environments which I think were exceptional. You know, now, but I agree, I really hear what you're saying, to say that's where my grief is.
It is, yeah.
Because I can't do anything about it. We can pray, which I think is a lot that you can do, but I can't do it. I can't protect, I can't provide those structures. And you know, for 6 months I was trying to, like, you know, figure it out, like, well, what can I do and say, like, you know, what, you know,
Yeah,
and
wanna go in and
there's
fix, you
nothing,
can't.
there's nothing. And he's an intelligent man, so he's got it all figured out. So that he's blocked me out at every turn, which I just think, you know, how could that possibly be? It makes no sense. And my counselor said to me, of course it doesn't make any sense. Because of certain activities that he participated in, the heavy pornography use when his body was being, you know, bathed in hormones and all of these kinds of things. Now, without getting too deep into that kind of stuff, but he has shaped his own brain. He has shaped his own experiences. He took what we did provide as a solid base and foundation, imperfect though it may have been in different aspects. No family is perfect, but we've tried to own our mistakes. But he took it in a direction which is just antithetical to our family. So I'm so pleased that you guys are sharing this, because I'm not pleased that you're experiencing it, but I'm pleased that you're sharing it, because it feels lonely out there. Like I feel sometimes like a failure as a father. My own son, the one person in this world that I was to model what being a godly man was to be. And I feel like a major failure. And I don't know how to, I don't have answers. I just don't know what to make of it. And I'm suffering as a result.
One of the things that is part of all this, and this is all very good sharing, is, but we need to let them have their own journey.
Yes.
And that journey may be a lot of frustration with how we raise them. And not just us, but the whole environment, siblings and that type of stuff. I mean, we try to do well, we try to do our best. And, but we need to let them have their journey and how they experience that, and not take them away from that, and not take that away from them because we have to feel like we were good parents.
Yes.
You know, it's their story, which is different than our story, and
But I think because this personality
yeah.
has to do with being a loving person, it feels like I didn't provide enough love. And that, in some ways, feels like an accusation about us. But we
Maybe
were
you're
exceptionally loving.
Taking it personal, like I can say in regards to my own daughter, like Kendra the twin, I know that by my coddling, I guess, the other twin, she probably did crave more of my attention, but because I was so focused on this child, the other one, it wasn't. So I probably did do some of that for her, but it wasn't my intent. I can look back at it now and say, okay, maybe I could see that happening or whatever. But again, she fell into that, and through that, she learned on her own what worked for her and didn't work for her. So it wasn't just from me that I created, maybe I was the first stepping stone to, not feeling, loved enough or whatever, or that she gave love, she'd get more back or whatever. I'm not saying that any of us have to take responsibility, but in my own situation, I can see just a little bit of where that could have come from, quite possibly. And I guess now, hearing all this and seeing all this, for my child, what I want to do to her is let her know that she is wanted, that she is loved, and that she can come to me for whatever she needs. And, I can't fix her. She can only fix herself, but I can still be there for her. And not saying that just because I'm saying that I have to take responsibility that she became this way or whatever, but just to let them know. Maybe for some unknown reason, we don't know, some circuit in their brain, they didn't get the message from us or from their other loved ones around them that they were wanted, that they were loved. Because we're all wired differently, so I don't know. I don't know if that's...
When I was 3 months old, my mom lit a candle in my crib because the lights were out, the electricity was out, and I knocked the candle over, burned my leg, and so I for several months, or a couple months, she had to put nitro, I don't know, something around zinc or something on my leg. It made me cry. It stung, it burned, and she was the one who did that. And here, a 3-month-old child very well could have interpreted that as being rejected. And I think I stopped breastfeeding around that time too, because of the whole situation. And again, that can equal rejection. So these things which my mom had no control over, that again can be taken as a child. Young children, we are in some ways wonderful and pure and innocent, but not a lot smart sometimes. and we come up with ideas about the world and how to survive that that do get us through childhood or get us through being 2 years old or whatever it may be, but they don't serve us well as we continue to go forward.
And sometimes too, sorry, I just sort of thought of this idea that when I listen to my 4 kids talk about their childhood and different things, and certain things will pop in their head as like being a significant event, and I think, I don't even remember that. So, like things that we don't think of may be significant to them, that was a milestone in their life, but didn't seem like a huge event. So they're very impressionable of different things that have happened throughout their lives that may, like I said, didn't mean anything to us, but to them was huge. And you talk to 4 kids about the same situation, and each one brought a totally different, perspective to it. And you think, oh, remember that? Oh, this is significant to me. But
I think, and maybe this is a little off track, but I'm just thinking for where I'm at with our son, I just kind of feel like it just felt like he went underground and we didn't see it. But he went underground on my watch. when he was a child under our structure and our responsibility and our guidance, and I didn't see it. And I'm a perceptive person, and so is my wife. So I think one of the other things that doesn't, I don't know if the Enneagram teaching has a spiritual edge to it. I think it can be applied that way. But the only thing I can see, and you actually pointed to it, according to the Christian tradition anyway, that we're not born pure. There's the seed of evil in every human person. And so I think that when that takes root in any of the personality types, that can, for all of us, we can choose. We're free moral agents to choose which direction to go, and we're all free to do that. And some people just take it in a completely different direction.
Through my beating myself up, the one thing that the Lord presses on me is that to let them go. You dedicated them to me. You gave them to me. And let me look after them. And it's your job. You're just there to love them. Just accept them and love them.
Well, I think,
But then we have an enemy too, right? So there's always that battle that he uses, presses your buttons.
And part of the accepting and loving is we got to accept them with all that they're at.
yes.
You know, one of the things that your kids had to deal with, that mine also had to deal with, was being pastor's children. And it's been interesting to listen to Tanya talk about what it meant to be a pastor's child, that I had no idea that this was going on sometimes. And, you know, and I think each of my children are each at different ages, of course, going through this. That's another environment that shaped them. Even when I wasn't trying to do it so much, it's what they perceive as the church is supposed to do, or, you know, who they're supposed to be in the church. All these things that, I mean, there's lots of different impacts and choices we make. We can never really know how those are going to affect our children. And they have their own journey. I mean, but God does give our children to us. It's as imperfect as we are.
Maybe it's unfair to ask you, Talia, but I guess you've got the unique relationship, and boy, do I appreciate you being here. But honestly, like how, like we're talking about kids that are not present here, who are adults. Would it be your first, you know, you'd have to be really vulnerable to answer this question, but would it be your first inclination to blame your parents?
No.
For why you have chosen various routes in your life? Or were you just totally just kind of...
I think my first blame was actually the church.
Yes.
Okay.
As a kid, I associated, because my dad was a pastor, I did associate the authority of the church as my dad. But as I've gotten older, I realized that what I felt, the unacceptance from the church, was not my family's view.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I didn't get along with my friends growing up. I didn't have healthy relationships with them, and I didn't really have a good relationship with anyone in the church, really. And that was a strong part of my life,
Yeah.
and that was where I definitely felt unwanted and unloved, and like I couldn't be myself. I felt like I had to fit a perfect role that was not me, and I took a long time to really realize who I am.
I really appreciate you saying that. You know, I kind of feel the same for my son and for my daughter, who have struggled a lot with the unkindnesses of the church, intentioned or not. They were exposed to some pretty high level conflict within the church and people acting quite unloving toward other people, and they were vicarious observers of this, and I'm trying to put myself into that position, because I wasn't the pastor's kid growing up, but I wonder if I could put myself into that position, in what you're talking about, and looking at that stuff and wondering, how would I have responded to that? The church being...
It's trauma. It's a vicarious trauma. They were not observers, they experienced it as participants. It's a trauma.
Thanks for saying that, yeah. Yeah.
Kids always blame themselves for their parents'
Yeah.
divorces and other things. The kids think they're to blame. Where oftentimes they're nowhere near to blame. But the kids take it in.
Yeah. Thanks, Talia, for being vulnerable like that, because that was maybe an unfair question to ask you, but thank you for answering that.
Also with the loving thing, you can give as much love as you want, but kids, they will see love in different ways, and maybe the way that you're sharing it isn't always. Like, there's a lot of times in my childhood where I didn't feel loved, even if I was surrounded by love. And especially in my teen years, I felt very alone and was going through really hard depression. And it's taken some time with our family for me to learn that I am loved.
Yes.
And to learn how to see it, I guess.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you can be surrounded by love, but you're blind to it.
And that's kind of how I see the loving person in number 2, is that they themselves are a loving person and they're surrounded by love,
But they can't necessarily
but
see it.
somehow they're not.
They block it.
They block it.
They block it because it's not okay to have needs. It's not okay to love myself, so I take care of myself. They block other people's love in a sense because I have to be working for them or be serving them. It's the way the world's supposed to work is not. I'm not supposed to be loved, in a sense. I mean, that's maybe too simplifying it too much, but that's this pattern here. I'm free from restrictions. I don't need love. I can give, and 24/7. I'm proud of my self-sacrifice to others. That's my role. I don't need to be loved. I can just give love, and so I don't see the love that others are trying to give me.
What's been impressed on me is that being judgmental and passing judgment. People aren't behaving the way we would like them to, or we think they should. It doesn't mean I'm not saying we're right either, but I think what our kids can't take is the judgment that comes with not accepting them, the warts and everything, It's the judgment that we place on them. My daughter Andrea, I think inside she knows that I'm disappointed. She knows that I'm judging her life as not adding up, and I need to get past that. And I'm not the judge. I'm not the judge. And I think I think our kids really perceive that. And but I'm not the judge. Then I'm passing judgment. And that's what I'm struggling with.
Yeah, and
I'm not the judge.
I struggle there as well. And a good direction to go for us is what we've been talking about here is not judging ourselves. That type of looking at ourselves, looking at all of our warts as well as our good parts, and not passing judgment on ourselves. Yeah, because we tend to judge others as we judge ourselves. Because we feel judged ourselves. There's that one kind of in all of us that. So it's the thing. Well, yeah. if we can see, we can observe our patterns without judgment, and they begin to lose hold on us. But that, and part of our patterns are to be judges. So even not to judge ourselves as judges is part of it too. Oh, I did it again, you know, and I'm not going to judge myself for that.
You're
I
human.
think I miss that too. As, to be kinder to yourself.
Yeah.
I think of the phrase, give yourself grace. You know,
Yeah.
God gives us grace. You know, he died on the cross because he loved us, right? He gives us grace. And we need to give it to ourselves.
We're supposed to, I forget, I'm supposed to do that for others, but I forget to do it for me.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, what time is it now?
I have no idea. Oh, there's a.
11 minutes after 9.
Okay, let's just
It's
finish.
9:11, sorry. It is. Look at that.
Let's just
This
finish.
kind of stuff is the best.
Oh, it is. It's very
This is the
good.
best part about the Enneagram is the sharing, you know, and because you get to know one another and be vulnerable in front of
Mhm.
people, and that's what makes us human and connect.
Right. So, let me just finish it too, so we'll go on for that. So the wake-up call for the 2, the thing that to pay attention to, is this believing, let's say that, believing that they must go out to others to win them over. You know, in a situation where I've got to take care of people, I've got to, you know, I have to do that in order to win people over, but that's the only role I can play. That sort of thing. And another wake-up call, if wanting to please becomes a habit, you know, I have to do it all the time, this is just who I am. Again, self-observation stops. You don't know that you've forgotten about your own needs and have altered self-presentation. There you go, that's what we're talking about with this, they block it. You know, 2s forget about their own needs, they alter who they are to different people in order to meet the needs of those different people. So, you know, all these different situations we talked about with 2s, there'll be somebody at church, there'll be somebody at school, and I remember not wanting to talk to too many people at once because I would be different people. You know, I'm adjusting myself this way to meet this person's needs, and that's kind of how I'm controlling the situation. And then I'll be a little bit different to meet this person's needs. And if I get those 2 people together, what am I supposed to do? I can't be both people at the same time.
But is it not exhausting? Like, are you exhausted from all of that? From being giving?
Yeah, well, yes, it is, and there's some ways we all have put out a lot of energy to maintain these identities, and 2s certainly do it. It's and they get resentful and those type of things too, which is the next thing. How 2s manipulate? Well, by finding out others' needs and desires and thus creating dependencies. You know, this is the person I'm supposed to be. This is the role that I'm supposed to fill. So I find other people who need me, and I create dependencies on me. You know, it works good in computers. Everybody needs me. and if you don't build solutions that work too well, you know, things fall down. You know, I'm always good at solving problems, and I don't really care about preventative maintenance that much. So I have to work at that but I like the fact that things break down sometimes, so people need me. But it does get boring sometimes too. But when manipulation doesn't work, fearing that they are unwanted and unloved, 2s make others feel unworthy of their love. And that's this sense of coming down on others or being bitter. 2s can be very bitter when they feel unloved, and making others feel like they're unworthy of being loved.
Sorry, I'm not sure if I'm following that. Are they trying to make others feel that the love that those people have is unworthy, or what is it? I'm not
It's
sure.
that the 2s feel unworthy themselves
Yes,
of being
they do.
loved. And so they want to make other people feel like what they feel. So they make other people feel unworthy as well. So they they, this is some of what we talked about a few minutes ago. Well, I'll have these conversations in my mind where I'm not feeling worthy, so I'll point out other people's mistakes in my mind in these conversations to, point out how they also are unworthy. And
So you don't necessarily say all this aloud.
but I can say it aloud. I know I've said it to my children before, the sense of, you didn't think of this. Don't you think about how people care? I mean, I've certainly said that to my 7th daughter, and this type of making other people recognize how much they haven't cared for me.
Yeah, see, these words have come right out of my son's mouth. They have, and I'm kind of going, when? Tell me when. Like, it hasn't happened, it's all in his mind, because it hasn't happened.
Yeah, but I think as parents, I've been in malls where kids are screaming and yelling, and I hear people saying, my kids never did that. Well, they did. You just don't, like this bit of a perception that sometimes I think we think we're better parents than we actually were. Not that we're terrible, but I think, we
Remember the good stuff.
yeah, the good stuff and the great job that I did, but I couldn't fill all the holes. Some of those couldn't be filled by God and extended family, so it's, what am I saying?
Well, but I even heard myself say that, and I never did that. Well, yeah, I think you're pointing out that nobody's that good.
There's also the perception of the children noticing the tiny things that maybe just the body language, maybe just your mood of the day.
Right.
Children will see that and react to that and
Absorb it.
and do that.
That's a good point,
In-
because
and you may not intentionally do it, but they see it somehow and then react, and then that sticks in their heads. And you could say you love them all the time, but it's sometimes the actions and the body language that speaks louder than any word.
when you've got a grandchild who rips around and they're not rebel children, they're not the perfect. And then after the eye rolling, people in the church, the kid walks by and they're, and the kid hasn't done anything wrong. And seriously, this has happened to some of my grandchildren, and it's no wonder they don't go.
I
mean, that's what, they haven't said anything to them,
I remember the notes in the church. I wish the pastor's children, from the all third person, would do such and such, or wouldn't do this such and such. And I wanted to, burn the people, actually, not just the notes.
That's not a bad idea. Number one choice.
He's writing it down.
I'm sorry, I didn't burn the guy, but
Buy some wood.
he got the look. I caught him giving the look he hadn't done anything wrong, and he's got that evil stink eye on him, so he got it right back from me, and he saw it.
But
I was tired of it.
Yeah, what world do these people live
so the red flag fear for two is that
Martians,
the thing for them to really pay attention to is if they're driving friends and loved ones away, they fear that they're being too close, too clingy, too helpful, and they're driving people away. It's a wake up call, and to say they're falling way into this personality, and again they can double down and try to do it even more,
Yes.
or they can look back off a little bit and maybe look at themselves and say, what's going on? Why am I so, what's really going on?
That's the epiphany that I pray for my son, because it's a destructive, and the problem is that he's being so supportive, but he cut off every person that ever loved him. And he isolated himself from all these people, teachers, pastors, friends, long-term acquaintances, people that did love his grandparents, his sister, us, uncles, aunts, everybody was shut out. And this whole thing that driving others away is so much a part of the story.
I know, the thing is that, what do you believe about your son's lifestyle, whatever it is? It's like putting on a pecking order. It's just someone that person that is unloving, can't stand children, gets angry at them, we can't rank these things. God's going to deal with that the same way he dealt with, you know what I'm saying? Like we have a, what's it called when you put things in order like this, but it's all screwed up?
Pecking order or
Well,
ranking?
pecking order or
Priorities.
We're judging things, we're saying this is better than that, or?
Jesus looked at the Pharisees, you wait in sepulchres, you're pretty, and then they had the person who was supposed to be the bad person,
He would seemingly give them a second chance.
well, give them second chances, but.
You'd also find the good in the bad person.
Right.
Or so that what we think is bad is not necessarily bad. The Good Samaritan type thing.
Or we think it's more bad. A serial killer, is a bad person, but I think that in God's eyes, the person who pretends to be the good person, who lies, who backstabs, who does these things and denies that they do them, it's just as bad as the person there. It says that if you break one part of the law, you've broken it all. So we have kind of I don't understand it, how being a liar can be just as bad as being a murderer. Like God's economy is so different than ours. I would, wow, you murdered, that's really bad. You're like, it's okay.
Well, there's various parts of that. Some of it is none are good, but God alone. But
yes,
we're all under grace. The gospel story is a story for everybody. That all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. And God loves us all enough for Christ to die on the cross. So we are all under that grace and love.
yes.
So it's like you say, the levels of judgment. We are as bad as the others, and we're also as loved as the others.
Yes.
That's the way that the gospel is, and that we can. We're not God. People don't have to live up to our standards, and we don't have to live up to our standards either. We can receive God's grace. God chooses to give grace to all, and that's something we can participate in, including giving grace to ourselves, rather than this. We've got to figure out who's bad or who's worse, or if my sin's not bad enough, her sins are too bad. It's participating in God's grace, receiving ourselves, receiving others here, now, as they are.
What he said. No, yeah, that's
Just acceptance. When you talk about your son and you said, that, like I look at that red flag and he's driving all his friends and his loved ones away. And I guess the best you can do is just continue to love him and hopefully that red flag will come down.
Yeah.
I don't know, what else can you do?
It just feels like we've been doing that all the way along.
Yeah, but maybe he's testing you, he's just
And
pushing.
I don't think I'm loving him less.
Maybe he has to find how to love himself before he can accept your love.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yet the thing that, as a two, and I think other types as well, You know, the thing that we desperately want from others, we can only truly receive from ourselves.
Yes.
We have to love ourselves. We have to want ourselves before we can receive it from others. And the others can do lots and lots of stuff, but until we learn to receive these things from ourselves, you know,
I appreciate that perspective because it's like, I don't want to go chasing after and doing all of these things and trying to prove my love and all of this kind of stuff. That's sick. That's not right, you know? I don't love my son any less than I ever did.
But what I'm saying is that maybe because of his actions, that he's thinking that you're not going to love him, and you're still standing your ground and saying, no, I still love you, I'm still here, I'm still here.
Yeah.
for you."
Well,
No, you don't have to be stalker dad.
That might be a,
well, thank you for that. Everything you said right up until that point was just awesome.
well, thank you all very, very much for this tonight. It's been great sharing and
Oh, man.
and good. And I'm, you know, it's very good how much we all came together with this and the experiences and everything that thank you.